Citibank had commissioned a 53-story, 1.3 million square foot building to be built in 1977 in downtown Manhattan. The architect, William Michaud, created one of the most unique buildings on the Manhattan skyline, a building that was raised on 114-foot stilts and with a 45-degree angle at the top. There were multiple reasons as to why this unique building shape was chosen. Michaud had created the rough design of the building on a napkin while dining out at a Greek restaurant. When Citibank was buying land for their project, they had to make multiple purchases with multiple landowners. One of the purchases was with St. Peter's Evangelical Lutheran Church, located at the corner of the entire lot, which had only agreed to the sale for the land if Citibank demolished the old church and built a new church at the same site. Citibank agreed to these conditions and commissioned the architects to work around this new land constraint. Michaud proposed high-rising stilts at the midpoint of each corner to raise the structure off the ground and over the church. These stilts would have an inverted chevron shape to support the loads caused by the winds. Inadvertently, what they had done was created a comparatively much lighter base of a skyscraper because of the amount of material that was used. The chevron stilts had caused the structure to move considerably in the wind. To compensate for this rocking motion, Michaud had included a large concrete counterbalance called a mass damper at the top of the building. This mass damper would not properly work in the event of a power outage, as it relied on electricity to work. William Michaud was contacted in 1978 by Diane Hartley, an undergraduate student at Princeton that was writing her thesis paper on this building, who had asked how the building would handle quartering winds given the unique shape of the structure. Michaud had not taken that point into consideration, as the only testing they had done for wind loads was a testing against perpendicular winds as required by Manhattan's building codes.
Design flaws and legal issues. The method in which the support beams were oriented compromised the integrity of the building structure. This is because the support beams were not oriented in the corners of the building, which usually helps protect against quarterly winds. The building was structurally weak against quarterly winds. If hurricane speed winds hit the building at a 45-degree angle, there was a potential for catastrophic failure due to the bolts. The building could have collapsed under high wind speeds during the time when Hurricane Ella was coming close to the East Coast. A counterweight was implemented to protect against perpendicular bisecting winds. The counterweight did not protect against quarterly winds and allowed for electricity to operate as intended. In the event of a disaster or power outage, that the counterweight would not operate as intended. It was discovered that a storm occurred in Manhattan every 55 years that could topple the building without the help of the counterweight. Without the counterweight, the storm that occurred every 16 years could do so. During the construction process, the construction company offered to bolt the steel joints instead of welding them together as originally planned. The structural engineer approved of this change without knowing these changes would affect the structural integrity of the building. The original steel welds were originally tested under wind tunnel speeds, but the new joints were not. Ethical issues. The main ethical issues that Citigroup Tower was surrounding Michaud and his company. The first issue was the analysis of the wind loads. Michaud, being the credit engineer that he was, should have been able to identify that the building was not like regular skyscrapers with its wonky design. Because of that, the building did not account for quarterly winds, but the minimum set out by building codes, which were probably outdated, which happened to be a violation of 72.B, safeguarding of life, 72.2I, which had been reported to the public when discovered instead of hiding it for 20 years, 77.2.8, the fear of repercussions if the issue were to go public. The possible solutions were to go public when the issue was addressed and then have resolved it by strengthening the building's joints. The next ethical issue was replacing the welds for bolted connections. This was a violation of section 72.2a, neglect by the firm by not checking that the bolted connection would have been strong enough to support the building throughout different weather conditions, and not informing the Michaud a decision they approved, which is also by doing so violated section 77.3. The firm also violated section 77.1.v, which would have been making a decision without fully understanding the repercussions of them, which would have been solved by informing the Michaud when the preposition of changing the welds to bolted connections was given, or one of the workers could have just blown the whistle, which is most likely have eliminated the entire issue. In addition, when Michaud was first informed of the changes, he could have directed for the reinforcement of the welds instead of waiting for the completion of the building. The final ethical issue that occurred was non-informing of the public of their discoveries or their issues. The public has the right to know what's happening with their lives can be in possible great danger. When Michaud was addressed about this issue, he downplayed the situation by saying the building was up to code and able to withstand the anticipated wind loads. When addressed about the braces, Michaud declined to tell the braces were optional. By withholding the information from public, it violated section 72.2.a, neglecting when reporting that his building was structurally sound, violating section 72.2.b and 77.2.I by not informing the people their miscalculation and people working there in the surrounding areas risked their lives. While withholding the information, they also violated section 77.2.8 by not maintaining the honor and integrity of the profession out of the fear of repercussions, which also delayed the potential integrity of this case into engineering regulations and standards. This could have been addressed by having the company outreach the public and media, informing them of the issue that occurred, by doing so preventing risk of damage and harm done to others by evacuating the area and performing immediate repairs which would have damaged the public image of the company, but kept the public safe, which could have also put the public first instead of their personal interests. Ethical issues. The main ethical issues that Citigroup Tower was surrounding Limicity and his company. The first issue was the analysis of the wind loads. Limicity, being the credit engineer that he was, should have been able to identify that the building was not like regular skyscrapers with its wonky design. Because of that, the building did not account for quarterly winds, but the minimum set out by building codes, which were probably outdated, which happened to be a violation of 72.B, safeguarding of life, 72.2i, which had been reported to the public when discovered instead of hiding it for 20 years, 77.2.8, the fear of repercussions if the issue were to go public. The possible solutions were to go public when the issue was addressed and then have resolved it by strengthening